Satanta, known among his people as White Bear Person, earned renown as a formidable Kiowa warrior who later rose to prominence as the principal chief during the Kiowa Wars of the 1860s to 1870s, earning the moniker the Orator of the Plains. He was born around 1820, during the peak of the Plains tribe's influence, likely along the Canadian River within the traditional winter encampments of his people. Having gained renown as a remarkable warrior, he was appointed as a sub-chief of his tribe under Chief Doasan while still in his 20s. Described as tall with a strong physique, upright posture, and a penetrating gaze, he joined Chief Doasan in the First Battle of Adobe Walls in 1864. His ingenious use of an army bugle during the battle earned him lasting fame for bewildering the troops. His eloquence earned him the esteemed title of the Orator of the Plains. Utilizing his persuasive skills, he negotiated numerous treaties with the American government, such as the Little Arkansas Treaty in 1865 and the Medicine Lodge Treaty in 1867, which mandated the relocation of the Kiowa people to a reservation. Despite assurances in the treaty granting the Kiowa sovereignty over their designated lands, the influx of white settlers persisted, encroaching upon their territory. Consequently, the Kiowa persisted in raiding settlements and disrupting immigrant activities. The precarious situation deteriorated following Chief Doasan's death in 1866. With his formidable leadership absent, rivalry among various sub-chiefs, including Satanta, Gipago, and Tenyangopte, intensified, leading to increased raids across the southern plains, stretching from Kansas to Texas during the autumn of 1866 and into 1867. Amidst one of these raids in the Texas Panhandle, the Kiowa fatally wounded a man named James Box and took his wife and 4 children captive, subsequently selling them to the army at Fort Dodge, Kansas. By this point, Satanta's reputation as both a warrior and a leader was on the rise. However, he was unable to prevent a clash between the Kiowa and the U.S. cavalry near Fort Zara, Kansas, in 1867. Following the death of a young Kiowa warrior at a civilian camp near the army fort, the Kiowa assembled to seek vengeance. In response, the cavalry launched an assault on the Kiowa encampment, resulting in the deaths of several children during the brief altercation. The Medicine Lodge Treaty of 1867 proved ineffective in addressing the root causes of conflict, and by early 1868, the Kiowa and other Plains tribes were engaging in direct attacks on white settlers. Concerned that these attacks might lead to a broader Indian uprising, General Philip H. Sheridan was dispatched to restore order during the Winter Campaign of 1868-69. Sheridan's approach involved the destruction of Kiowa homes and horses, which significantly weakened the Kiowas' resolve to resist, particularly after Lieutenant Colonel George A. Custer razed the southern Cheyenne village on the Washita River on November 27, 1868. Upon learning of Custer's readiness to harm women and children, Satanta and Gipago chose to surrender. Hoisting a flag of truce, the 2 chiefs approached Custer on December 17th, but were promptly apprehended and detained for almost 3 months as Custer sought authorization to execute them. Eventually, in February 1869, Tenyangopte secured their release by pledging that the Kiowa would relocate to the reservation and refrain from further assaults on white settlers. However, by 1871, Satanta and his followers grew discontented with the reservation and commenced multiple assaults on wagon trains in Texas. On May 18, 1871, Satanta, Big Tree, and Satang orchestrated an attack on the Warren wagon train raid in Texas, also known as the Salt Creek Massacre. This event unfolded as Henry Warren was contracted to transport supplies to Texas forts, including Fort Richardson, Fort Griffin, and Fort Concho. While the convoy was traveling along the Jacksboro-Belknap Road on May 18th towards Salt Creek Crossing, they encountered General William T. Sherman, who had permitted Satanta and his men to proceed without interference. Less than an hour later, the wagon train encountered a group of around 100 warriors. Realizing an impending assault, the wagon train swiftly formed a defensive circle, but the 12 teamsters were overrun by the warriors. Following the onslaught, the Indians seized the supplies and slaughtered 7 of the wagon drivers. 5 men successfully fled, with Thomas Brazil covering the 20-mile distance on foot to reach Fort Richardson. Upon receiving news of the attack, Colonel Ranald S. Mackenzie promptly notified General Sherman, who ordered Mackenzie to apprehend the responsible Indians and ensure justice was served. Their assignment, however, became redundant when Satanta, shortly after arriving back at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, with his men following the raid to collect their rations, faced interrogation from Indian agent Lori Tatum. Displaying poor judgment, the warrior boasted about the raid, prompting a shocked Tatum to promptly hand over the chiefs to General Sherman. Subsequently, the warriors were transported to Jacksboro, Texas, to face trial for murder. Bound and escorted, Satanta, Satank, and Big Tree departed Fort Sill on June 8, 1871. Satank met his demise while resisting a guard, while Satanta received a warning about the possibility of facing execution for his offenses. In response, Satanta declared, "I am a revered chief among my people. If you execute me, it will ignite like a spark on the prairie, creating a massive and dreadful fire." Satanta and Big Tree underwent trial in Texas and received death sentences. However, Texas Governor Edmund Davis intervened, overturning the court's decision, and their penalty was commuted to life imprisonment. During his time behind bars, a visitor depicted Satanta as a tall, well-built man, regal in demeanor, who even in prison attire appeared dignified. Merely 2 years later, Satanta was granted release in 1873, contingent upon the behavior of their tribe. The subsequent year, Satanta and his warriors resumed hostilities, targeting buffalo hunters and participating in what is referred to as the Second Battle of Adobe Walls, taking place on June 27, 1874. In October 1874, Satanta was apprehended once more and returned to the Texas Penitentiary at Huntsville. Unwilling to endure a lifetime behind bars, Satanta took his own life on October 11, 1878, by hurling himself from a high window of the prison hospital. Meanwhile, Big Tree and several other chiefs suspected of harboring clandestine hostility were imprisoned at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Following Big Tree's release, he resided on an allotment from the reservation until his passing in 1929.